China History, Iron, and Ideals, from the Zhou Dynasty's Innovations to the Warring States, Episode 2. Large-scale irrigation systems transformed agriculture, and a new network of canals was built to transport various goods over long distances previously unimaginable. Horseback riding became the standard for both travel and military use, and news of silk production spread to Europe. The Chinese surpassed bronze in favor of mastering iron. Perhaps the most important of these newfound transformations was the transition from bronze to iron. Europe and the Middle East were hundreds of years behind the Zhou Dynasty, which could now cast iron using refractory clay in furnaces and molds. They used the molten metal to mass-produce weapons and agricultural tools, propelling the military and society in general forward at an unprecedented pace. However, with this rapidly growing empire, instability was bound to arise. The Zhou Dynasty can be divided into two distinct periods. The first is the Western Zhou Dynasty. During this time, the new dynasty operated under the feudal system, a pyramid-shaped power structure where power and land were concentrated in the royal family and distributed to local lords as they saw fit. While this system was effective for the Zhou Dynasty for about 2 centuries, their influence and stability began to wane as the feudal lords grew stronger and served their own interests. They began to rebel and sack the capital Haojing, and in a move that echoed the constant capital moves of their predecessors, the Zhou Dynasty fled to their new capital, Luoyang. In all but name and technically, the vassal states had essentially taken control of the land and ruled it. This shift marked the beginning of the Eastern Zhou period, which is now recognized as beginning in 771 BC. This era produced perhaps the most important Chinese philosophies ever in 3 schools of thought: Confucianism, legalism, and Taoism. Confucius, or Master Kong, was the most famous ancient Chinese philosopher, and his school of thought aimed to create a society driven by respect, justice, and a widespread desire for peace. Born as Kong Qiu in the Zhou Dynasty's vassal state of Lu, his father Kong He was a commander of the Lu garrison, but died when Confucius was only 3 years old, leaving his mother to raise the boy alone in poverty. He dedicated his life to education, studying classical Chinese works in a school for commoners. After learning literature, history, and music, he married at the age of 19 and started a family. Confucius's mother died just 4 short years later at the age of 40. It is said Confucius mourned her death for 3 years. He worked a variety of low-ranking government jobs, such as bookkeeping and tending livestock, just to afford a proper burial for his mother. As he grew older, Confucius built a reputation among the local ruling class. The state of Lu was ruled by 3 ducal families, who appointed Confucius as minister of crime. Confucius believed there was inherent good in humanity, and thus the core of his philosophy was to restore the moral law of morally decadent China through social relationships. After hearing about the wars, orgies, live burials, and dismemberment practiced by previous rulers, one can understand why he grew increasingly dismayed by the decay of Chinese society. He established a hierarchical system of existence to restore order and insisted that every citizen understand and embrace their specific role on this ladder. Confucius emphasized the importance of respecting elders and accepting their subservience as a necessary step to maintaining a civil society. The family is the foundation of the 5 bonds, and its effects are still seen in modern China. The tradition of filial piety means that parents are indebted to their children in terms of providing care, safety, and education, and children are indebted to their parents in terms of providing services, respect, and upholding the family honor through their actions. The family must maintain its morality as a unit, and the benevolent family unit would later expand to encompass the larger Chinese society, as China, for Confucius, was essentially one huge family. His system called for the government to serve and care for its people, just as parents do for their children. While Confucius advocated for social harmony through widespread benevolence, another school of thought was developing in China that directly opposed his teachings: legalism. Unlike Confucianism, legalism states that people are inherently bad and require law and punishment to maintain order. It evolved from the teachings of Han Feizi, a Confucian reformer, who believed that an organized society is a strict society and a good citizen is one who allows himself to be controlled. It gained momentum rivaling Confucianism throughout the Zhou Dynasty's rule. The third major philosophy of the Zhou Dynasty was Taoism, which emphasized humanity's need to achieve natural harmony with the universe. Humans are supposed to follow the will of the universe, and the tendency to conflict with its energy should be avoided. The classic yin and yang symbol embodies the philosophy where one must accept the balance and natural forces of the universe to achieve harmony. Unlike Confucianism and legalism, which called for various moral actions and behaviors from the Chinese population, Taoism embraced inaction and a philosophy that can be aptly summarized as go with the flow. These three philosophies are all incredibly prevalent throughout Chinese history and the contemporary state, and are the most important contribution of the Zhou Dynasty's reign due to the prominence of philosophical development at this time. The era and its products are known as the 100 Schools of Thought, Warring States period. Simultaneously with these developments, various states within the Zhou Dynasty began declaring their independence. Former dukes started calling themselves kings, insisting they were politically equal to the King of Zhou. This period is known as the Warring States, a turbulent period in which 7 former vassal states fought for absolute rule over the lands of China. These states were Qin, Han, Yan, Wei, Chu, Qi. At this time, the famous general and strategist Sun Tzu wrote The Art of War, the oldest documented work on military science and warfare. Although the book covered a wide range of military tactics and philosophies of war, such as when to push your armies forward and how to develop strategic flexibility in the face of unpredictable large-scale warfare, it's no wonder why the art of war was born in this era. Warfare in China transformed. Battles became more complex in the Warring States period as generals used strategy and deception to gain the upper hand. With increasing troop numbers and conscription of males as young as 15, individual battles often lasted much longer than a few days like previous clashes, with some extending for months or years. The strongest rising power in the country during this time was Qin. They were led by Ying Zheng, or Qin Shi Huang, which literally translates to First Emperor of Qin. Although alliances and shared interests had protected them in the past, the Warring States period fostered an every man for himself attitude. Ying Zheng's next target was the state of Zhou. It wasn't the first time the two sides had fought. Just 2 decades earlier, they fought the Battle of Changping, which is considered one of the bloodiest battles in human history. Records estimate 450,000 Zhou deaths and 250,000 Qin deaths. Due to this decisive Qin victory, the state of Zhou was still weak when Ying Zheng marched his men across their border to finish what was started long ago. Despite its deteriorated state, Zhou possessed something Qin did not, a general named Li Mu. Li Mu had an impressive military reputation due to his previous deceptions of massive enemy armies and his victories in numerous raids and battles. When it became clear that Qin aimed to conquer the state of Zhou, his attention also turned to the western border to face the newly ascended Ying Zheng. Any progress made by the forces was immediately countered by Li Mu's tactics, and it became quite clear to Ying Zheng that as long as Li Mu was alive, no significant progress would be made. Having failed on the battlefield, he targeted the general through cunning political means. He bribed figures from the Zhou court and sent spies to cause chaos within their government systems. His goal was to create distrust between Yu Mu, the king of Zhou, and General Li Mu. He eventually succeeded, and the king was convinced that Li Mu and his trusted companions were planning a violent rebellion. The general was removed from his post and executed. Zhou was quickly conquered after Li Mu's death, as his successor Zhao Kong was no match for the bloodthirsty Qin. The state capital, Handan, fell in 228 BC. Ying Soma is sure to execute the naive King Yu Mu as well. Although some self-proclaimed kings and kingdoms emerged in Zhou after this major loss, the state no longer posed a real threat to Qin. Any rebellion or descendant of a king who rose to power was suppressed over the next few years until the entire region was fully annexed. After this success, Ying Zheng turned his focus to the kingdom of Yan. Aware of the imminent military force on his doorstep, Crown Prince Dan aimed to defeat Qin in another way, by assassinating Ying Zheng himself. He chose an assassin named Jing Ke to kill Zheng in a suicide mission using a dagger poisoned to the highest possible degree of sharpness. The plan was to approach the Qin court pretending to be a treacherous noble begging for mercy. He was to present maps of Dukang, the fertile agricultural region Zheng wanted to capture first in his invasion, as well as the head of the defecting Qin general Huan Yi, before plunging the blade deep into Ying Zheng. The dagger would be hidden on the side of the map so Jing Ke could strike once he got close. After Jing Ke explained the plan, The disgraced general agreed to commit suicide by slitting his throat in exchange for his head, as long as it meant Yingzheng's death and the collapse of Qin. He slit his throat without protest. With the head and maps now ready, Jing Ke and his extremely nervous companion, Qin Wuyang, traveled to present their gifts to Yingzheng. Qin Wuyang was so anxious when they arrived at the palace that he entered a state of near paralysis, barely able to move. Despite Jing Ke's excuses, Qin Wuyang was not allowed to proceed further, and the assassin would now have to enter the court alone. King Zheng was surprised by the sudden movement and managed to slip from his grasp, turn, and flee from the attacker. Chaos erupted in the palace, and the king narrowly survived by constantly running in circles behind a pillar. All armed guards were stationed outside, and his ceremonial sword was too long to be drawn quickly enough to defend himself against Jing Ke. Fortunately for Yingzheng, a royal physician stepped forward and threw his medicine bag at Jing Ke, slowing him down long enough for the king to draw his blade. He stabbed his leg, prompting the wounded assassin to throw his dagger in a final attempt to kill his target. He missed the mark, and Yingzheng stabbed him 8 more times. In his final moments, the assassin mocked the king with obscene gestures until the guards executed both him and the now fleeing Qin Wuyang. The attempt failed miserably and only served to make Yingzheng angrier and more obsessed. He and his army invaded Yan in 226 BC and quickly captured the capital, Jicheng. In an attempt to gain the forgiveness of the Qin king, the now desperate King Shi of Yan executed his son, Crown Prince Dan, as an apology for the assassination attempt. He sent his son's head to Yingzheng, which delayed the full annexation of Yan for a few short years before Qin returned to destroy them definitively in 222 BC.